What if everything you believed about your own limits was a lie? What if the wall you keep hitting, that invisible ceiling that stops you from going further, doing more, becoming better, is not made of reality? What if it's made entirely of fear, of comfort, of stories you've told yourself for so long that you stopped questioning them? Welcome to Can't Hurt Me, the brutally honest, life-changing memoir and self-help manifesto by David Goggins. This is not a feel-good motivational video. This is a war cry. This is a blueprint for becoming uncommon among uncommon people. And by the time this video ends, I promise you, if you're paying attention, you will never look at suffering, discipline, pain, or your own potential the same way again. David Goggins is a retired Navy SEAL, ultra-marathon runner, ultra-triathlete, world record holder for the most pull-ups done in 24 hours, and one of the most mentally tough human beings alive on this planet. He has run races over 100 miles through deserts. He has completed multiple military selection programs that each have 80% dropout rates. He has pushed his body to the edge of death, not once, but repeatedly, and always come back. But he didn't start that way. He started broken, abused as a child, obese as a young adult, paralyzed by fear and self-doubt, working a dead-end job, going nowhere. And what he did with that pain, with that brokenness, with that seemingly impossible starting point, is one of the most extraordinary stories in modern history. In this video, we're going to go through the most powerful lessons from Can't Hurt Me, chapter by chapter. And each one is a challenge, not just an insight, a direct challenge to you, sitting here, watching this right now. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. I should have been a statistic. David Goggins was born into a nightmare. His father, Toughness Goggins, was a violent, controlling man who ran a roller skating rink and forced his family, including young David, to work there through the night every single night. His childhood was defined by fear, exhaustion, and abuse. His father beat his mother regularly. He beat David. He controlled every aspect of their lives. The family was essentially trapped. When David was 8 years old, his mother finally found the courage to escape with David and his older brother, fleeing to a small town in Indiana. But escaping his father didn't mean escaping the damage that had already been done. David arrived at his new school unable to read properly. His hair was falling out from chronic stress. He had developed a stutter. He was black in a nearly all-white town in the 1980s, where racism was not subtle. It was open, organized, and violent. His teachers assumed he was intellectually disabled. His classmates bullied him. He cheated through school, copying off other students just to pass. By all statistical measures, by every standard the world uses for predicting outcomes, David Goggins should have become another casualty of his environment, another broken child who grew into a broken adult, another number in a government statistic about poverty, crime, or failure. The system was not built for him to win. His circumstances were not in his favor. His past was a wound, not a foundation. But here is where Goggins plants the first seed of the entire book, the concept of radical personal accountability. Not the comfortable kind of accountability, not the kind where you acknowledge your flaws and then get a hug for your honesty, the brutal kind, the kind that means staring into your own eyes in a mirror and admitting without flinching that you, regardless of what was done to you, are responsible for who you become. He writes, "You are stopping you. You are giving up instead of getting hard." Most of us look at our circumstances and use them as explanations. Goggins looked at them and used them as motivation. That difference, that single critical difference in interpretation, is the first thing separating people who transform their lives from people who spend their lives explaining why they couldn't. Chapter 2. Truth Hurts. Fast forward to Goggins in his mid-20s.
By this point, he has drifted completely. He's working as a pest control technician, spraying cockroaches in restaurants for minimum wage. He weighs close to 300 pounds. His diet is largely chocolate milkshakes and sugary cereals. His ambitions feel like a fantasy. His life feels like it has already been decided. Then, late one night, flipping through channels, he sees a television documentary about Navy SEAL training, specifically about Hell Week. 6 days of almost no sleep, constant cold water immersion, brutal physical demands, an 80% dropout rate. It is designed to simulate the stress of combat and to find out who breaks. Most people watch something like that and feel relief that they don't have to do it. Goggins watched it and felt called. He thought, "Those are the toughest men on earth. I want to know if I am capable of becoming one of them." But before any of that could happen, the truth had to come first. Goggins introduces one of the book's foundational tools, the accountability mirror. Every single morning, he stood in front of his bathroom mirror and put post-it notes on the glass, not affirmations, not vision board material, honest confrontations with his own reality. Notes that said things like, "You weigh almost 300 pounds. You are afraid. You quit. You cheated through school. You are lying to yourself." This practice is not self-hatred. It is not negativity. It is the refusal to live inside a comfortable illusion. Because here is the brutal truth about most human beings. We are extraordinarily skilled at convincing ourselves that we are doing better than we actually are. We think we are working hard when we are really just going through motions. The accountability mirror forces you to end the performance and see the real version of yourself. Once Goggins could see himself clearly, he acted. He lost nearly 100 pounds in under 3 months to meet the weight requirement for SEAL training. 100 pounds in less than 90 days, not with a sophisticated nutrition plan or a personal trainer, with obsession, discipline, sacrifice, and a complete refusal to accept his own excuses. The lesson here is devastating in its simplicity. Most of us haven't even started because we haven't been honest enough to see where we actually are.
Chapter 3. The Impossible Task. Navy SEAL BUDS training, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL training, is one of the most physically and psychologically demanding military programs in the world. The dropout rate during Hell Week alone can reach 80% in a single class. Men who have been training for years, men who are physically elite, men who have wanted this their entire lives, they quit. Goggins failed the program on his first attempt. He failed again on his second. He pushed through to complete it on his third attempt, and during that third Hell Week, he developed stress fractures in both shins, and his body began breaking down from the inside. His knees were swelling. He could barely walk. Any sensible person, any doctor, would have told him to stop. He didn't stop. This is where Goggins formulates what may be the most important concept in the entire book, the 40% rule. The premise is this: when your mind tells you that you are done, that you have hit your absolute limit, that you cannot take one more step, that you have nothing left, you have used approximately 40% of your actual capacity. The remaining 60% is still there, locked away behind a mental wall constructed by your brain to keep you safe and comfortable. Your brain is not your ally when it comes to pushing limits. It is, in evolutionary terms, a survival machine. Its primary job is to keep you alive. And in order to keep you alive, it will consistently pull the emergency brake long before your body actually needs to stop. It misreads discomfort as danger. It misreads effort as emergency. So when you feel done, when every fiber of your being is screaming at you to quit, that is not a signal that you have reached your limit. That is a signal that you have reached the beginning of the territory where real growth happens. The 40% rule completely reframes what it means to be tired, to be in pain,
to want to stop. Goggins crossed the finish line of Hell Week with stress fractures in his legs, not because his body could handle it perfectly, but because his mind refused to accept the story that he was done. Chapter 4. Taking Souls. Goggins introduces a concept called taking souls, and it is one of the most psychologically sophisticated ideas in the entire book. Here is the scenario. Someone is trying to break you. Maybe it is an instructor, maybe it is a competitor, maybe it is a boss, a critic, a circumstance, a system. They want you to fail. They expect you to fail. They may even be actively working to make you fail. You have two choices. You can break, which is what they want and what your own mind will suggest, or you can make a different decision. You can decide that everything they throw at you, every insult, every obstacle, every moment of cruelty or doubt is fuel. You can decide to outwork them so completely, so visibly, so undeniably, that you don't just survive their attacks, you break their belief in their own power over you. You take their soul. During Bud's training, Goggins was targeted by instructors who saw his psychological profile, a big, intense black man who had come into training with almost no conventional background, and wanted to see if they could break him. He responded by becoming the most consistent performer in the class, not because he was the most naturally gifted, because he was the most willing to suffer. And there is a critical point buried in this concept. Taking souls is not about ego. It is not about proving something to someone else. It is about converting external pressure into internal fuel. It is a psychological judo move, using the force of someone else's doubt as the energy source for your own growth. Think about the people in your life who have doubted you, the ones who told you it couldn't be done, that you weren't good enough, that you should be more realistic. Now think about what it would feel like to not just prove them wrong, but to become so good that your very existence challenges their worldview. That is taking souls, and it starts with choosing to see their doubt as your edge. Chapter 5. Armored Mind and the Cookie Jar. After completing SEAL training, Goggins served in some of the most dangerous combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. He watched friends die. He carried survivor's guilt. He came back from war carrying wounds that weren't visible, and he had to figure out what to do with all of it. Then he discovered ultra-endurance athletics. Almost on a whim, he decided to enter a 100-mile trail race, the Badwater 135, one of the world's most grueling ultra-marathons, to raise money for the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, which supports families of fallen special operators. He had no long-distance running training. He had never run more than a few miles at a time. He entered anyway. He finished. Barely. His feet were destroyed. His kidneys were failing from rhabdomyolysis, a condition where muscle breaks down and floods the bloodstream with proteins that can shut down the kidneys. He was in serious medical danger, but he finished. This race taught him the foundation of what he calls the armored mind, the idea that mental toughness is not a personality trait you are born with. It is a skill you build deliberately through accumulated evidence of your own resilience. This is where the cookie jar comes in. The cookie jar is a mental inventory, a list you keep in your mind of every hard thing you have ever pushed through, every moment you wanted to quit but didn't, every obstacle you overcame when you were certain you couldn't, every time life hit you and you got back up. When you are deep in suffering, when you are at mile 80 of a 100-mile race and your body is shutting down, you reach into the cookie jar, you pull out a memory, you say to yourself, I survived that, I pushed through that, I have been in darkness before and I came out the other side. And that memory becomes the rope you hold on to. Most people run from their worst memories. Goggins keeps his close, organized, and ready, because every scar you carry is not a wound, it is a weapon. Every hard thing you've survived is proof of what you can survive again. The armored mind is built one hard experience at a time. You cannot skip the suffering and still get the armor. That's not how it works.
Chapter 6. It's not about a trophy. Here is where Goggins most directly challenges the way modern culture thinks about success and achievement. Most motivational content, most self-help, most productivity culture is fundamentally focused on outcomes, the result, the reward, the recognition, the trophy. Do the work to get the thing. Suffer through the process to reach the destination. Goggins thinks this framing is a trap. When a person works with their hands repeatedly, gripping ropes, swinging hammers, holding tools, the skin on their hands develops calluses. The skin thickens, it becomes resistant. It can handle more because it has been hardened by friction and time. The mind works exactly the same way. Every time you choose discomfort over comfort, every time you push when your body wants to stop, every time you do the difficult thing instead of the easy thing, your mind gets a little harder, a little more resilient, a little more capable of handling what comes next. But this only happens through real, voluntary suffering, not simulated suffering, not the kind of challenge that still has an escape route. The kind that strips away every performance, every social mask, every excuse, and leaves you alone with the real version of yourself. Goggins ran 100 miles not primarily to hold a record. He set a pull-up world record not primarily to be famous. He did these things because each one added another layer of callous to his mind, made him a little more capable, a little more armored, a little more certain of what he could endure. The trophy is not the point. Who you become in the pursuit is the point. And the person you become through voluntary, sustained suffering is not someone who can be manufactured any other way.
Your mind is the most powerful weapon you possess. Not your talent, not your resources, not your network. Your mind. Specifically, your ability to control the narrative it tells about who you are and what you are capable of. Goggins introduces the concept of the governor, the internal limiter that your mind has set for your performance. Like a governor on a car engine that prevents it from exceeding a certain speed, your mind has imposed a ceiling on your effort based on your past experiences, your fears, and your beliefs about yourself. The governor is not your enemy. It exists for a reason. But when you are trying to grow, to transform, to become something you have never been before, the governor is the obstacle. And the only way to remove it is to consistently, deliberately push past the limits it has set. Goggins describes completing a pull-up world record attempt with torn calluses on his hands. The skin on the palms had literally ripped away. Blood was mixing with chalk. Each repetition was a choice to continue despite what his nerve endings were screaming at him. Most people would not have started in that condition. He finished the record. He argues that 90% of people, maybe more, are living at 40% of their capacity and have called it their best. They have optimized for comfort. They have built a life that is good enough, and they have made peace with never knowing what they were truly capable of. This is not a judgment, it is an observation, and the observation leads to a question that Goggins wants you to sit with. Are you actually living at your capacity, or are you living at the level that feels safe? And is there a difference between those two things? The gap between who you are and who you could be is not filled with talent or luck or the right circumstances. It is filled with one thing only, a willingness to suffer in the direction of growth. Chapter 8. Talent Not Required. This chapter is Goggins' most direct assault on the mythology of talent. We live in a culture that is obsessed with natural ability. We look at exceptional people and tell ourselves comforting stories. They were born with it, they got lucky, they had advantages I don't have. We use the idea of talent as a reason our own limitations are permanent and acceptable. Goggins was not born exceptional. He could not read properly. He was obese. He failed SEAL selection twice. He was not, by any conventional measure, talented in the areas that made him famous. What he had was willingness. The willingness to do what gifted people won't, because gifted people often don't feel they need to. The willingness to work when no one is watching. The willingness to look stupid in the learning process. The willingness to fail publicly and come back anyway. He talks in detail about how he structures his time, down to the hour. He wakes before sunrise. He accounts for every segment of his day. He treats time the way a person who understands scarcity treats money, with precision and respect. Not because he loves rigid structure, but because he understands something most people never fully absorb. 24 hours is the only resource that is truly equal between all human beings. The billionaire has 24 hours. The beginner has 24 hours. What you do with those hours compounded over years is the entire story. Goggins also talks about what he calls the $10 million challenge. The idea that if someone handed you $10 million and said you had to earn it by achieving a specific goal, the limitations you thought were permanent would suddenly become negotiable. You would find the time, you would find the discipline, you would find the will. So the question is not whether you are talented enough. The question is whether you want it enough. And the uncomfortable follow-up is, if you want it enough, what would your daily schedule actually look like? Chapter 9. Uncommon amongst uncommon. There is a particular kind of danger that comes with reaching a high level of achievement. It is the danger of comfort at a new altitude. You worked extraordinarily hard to get to a level most people never reach, and now that you are there, the pressure to keep going feels different. You have earned the right to coast, the world tells you. You have done enough. Goggins has contempt for this moment. He introduces the standard of being uncommon amongst uncommon, the refusal to let even your own achievements become the ceiling of your ambition. He became a Navy SEAL, one of the most elite warriors in the world. Then he became a Ranger, then a JTAC, a Joint Terminal Attack Controller, coordinating airstrikes in combat. Then he ran ultramarathons. Then he set a world pull-up record. Then he got a college degree. Then he began competing in ultra-triathlons. He was never satisfied. Not because of ego or an inability to feel peace, but because he understands at a fundamental level that comfort is the enemy of growth, and that settling, even into excellence, is a form of dying. The standard of uncommon amongst uncommon is not achievable through talent. It is achievable only through the refusal to stop. It is what happens when you treat the pursuit of your own limits not as a phase of your life, but as your permanent orientation towards living. There is always another level. There is always more you have not done. There is a version of yourself that is harder, cleaner, more capable, more disciplined. The only question is whether you are willing to keep going when the comfortable version of your life is sitting there, available, waiting for you to choose it.
Chapter 10. The Empowerment of Failure. The final major lesson of Can't Hurt Me is perhaps the most counterintuitive thing in the entire book. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is the mechanism through which success is built. Goggins failed Bud's SEAL selection. He failed it multiple times. He failed races. He failed physically in ways that broke his body. Rhabdomyolysis, stress fractures,
heart abnormalities. He failed in public, repeatedly, on some of the most grueling stages in the world of endurance sports and military service. And every single failure taught him something that success never could have. He introduces the after-action review, a military practice borrowed from combat operations. After every mission, every training exercise, every significant event, you sit down and conduct an honest review. What happened? What went well? What didn't? What must change? You do not do this to beat yourself up. You do not do it to celebrate. You do it to extract every useful piece of information and discard everything that doesn't serve the mission. Goggins applies this to every failure in his life, not to ruminate, not to be victimized, to learn. Most people treat failure as shame, something to hide from, move past, and never revisit. Goggins treats failure as expensive, painful, instructive data. And the difference between those two approaches is everything. When failure is shame, you avoid situations where you might fail, which means you avoid growth. When failure is data, you run toward hard things, because every failure is feedback, and feedback is how you become better faster than anyone else. The person who is willing to fail more is the person who is learning more. The person who is learning more is the person who grows fastest. And over time, the person who grows fastest is the one who wins, not because they were the most talented, but because they were the most willing to be taught by reality. The final lesson, what pain really is. Here is the final, deepest teaching of Can't Hurt Me. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is your teacher. It is the most honest feedback mechanism in the universe. It tells you exactly where your edge is, exactly where you haven't grown yet, exactly which version of yourself is still waiting to be built. The people who spend their lives avoiding pain avoid growth along with it. They arrive at the end of their lives comfortable, safe, unexplored. And the question Goggins wants you to ask yourself, the question that haunts this entire book, is what is the cost of that comfort? What did you leave undiscovered? What did you never become? The people who lean into pain, who welcome it, use it, extract meaning from it, those people become something the comfortable never can. Not because they suffer more, but because they choose to suffer forward, towards something, with purpose. Goggins grew up in conditions that should have destroyed him: a violent father, poverty, racism, educational failure, a body damaged by years of stress and neglect. And instead of letting those conditions define him, he made the most important decision of his life. He refused to let his past determine his future. He took every blow from his father, from society, from his own failures, and he used them. He built with them. He transformed destruction into foundation. He is not asking you to have his life. He is not asking you to run 100 miles or join the military or set world records. He is asking you something much simpler and much harder: to take your life, whatever it is, however broken it feels, however far from where you want to be, and to ask yourself honestly, what can I build with this? Because the answer always is more than you think. Outro. Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins is not a book you read and feel inspired for an afternoon. It is a book that rewires the way you see yourself, the way you understand pain, suffering, discipline, failure, and what it means to truly try. It holds a mirror up to every excuse you have ever made, to every comfortable choice, to every time you told yourself you gave everything when you didn't, to every version of your potential you decided wasn't worth fighting for. Let me give you the 6 core lessons one more time. 1. Use the accountability mirror. Stop hiding from your own truth. Look at yourself clearly, honestly, without flattery, because you cannot fix what you refuse to see. 2. Remember the 40% rule. When you feel done, when you feel like you have nothing left, you are at 40%. The real work begins in that exact moment. 3. Build your cookie jar. Your history of survival is your greatest mental asset. Keep it close. Use it when the suffering gets loud. 4. Callous your mind. Growth happens at the edge of discomfort and only there. Seek voluntary suffering. Choose the harder path. 5. Become uncommon amongst uncommon. Never settle, not even into excellence. There is always another level. Always. 6. Use failure as data, not shame. Conduct your after-action review. Extract the lesson. Come back harder. If this video moved you, if any part of it shifted something inside you, share it. Someone in your life needs to hear this. Subscribe to this channel because we bring you the most powerful books broken down into lessons that actually change how you think and how you live. You are not your circumstances. You are not your past. You are not your fear. You are what you choose to do with all of it. You cannot hurt the person who has decided never to quit. See you in the next one.